Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of the Overtime Sports Show. My name is Greg Gross, my co-host, as always, Dan O'Brien, here with you for the next hour and a half or so, give or take, to talk everything in the world of sports with you. Dan, I'm going to turn over the floor right away to you because we got a lot to cover, but if anybody's been paying attention, we always start every single one of our shows so far with an awesome hat reveal. Floor is yours, Dan.
Yep.
Eager to see what you got for me.
Yep. So as you just mentioned, we've been doing this for just at least 17 shows. So I've been able to get a new hat every single episode. And I think I was telling you before we came on, I got two more in my repertoire. So I got one tonight and one next week. So without further ado, please hold.
Let me see. Let's see. Okay. Very nice.
So this bad boy right here is the couple years ago 4th of July New York Yankees hat that they wore on 4th of July. As everybody can see, it's got the American flag in the middle. So, like I said, I got a couple in the repertoire, so I had to pull out a Yankee one. And the next week's going to be an interesting one, but it'll be fun. But there's some relevance to it, too, as everybody knows. We just signed your boy Marcus Stroman to a 2-year deal, $37 million. So he's a local Long Island boy. So I'm a little iffy on him. I mean, he's up and down, as you saw him with your Mets career. I mean, he was good, he was bad, he was good, he was bad. I mean, he played good for the Blue Jays for, I want to say, 3-4 years. Then you guys got him. I think you had him for, a year and a half or half a year at least?
Yeah, a little while.
Yeah, and last year, beginning of the season, in the first half, I know he had like a 3 ERA. The second half, he got rattled. He got up to about a 4.50 ERA. So I'm hoping he can go back to the first half stats, but pretty good signing. I mean, we need pitching, so he's a good pitcher. So I'm excited for it.
Nice. Yeah, I did see the signing. I was actually with my buddy Jack, who's a Yankees fan like yourself, and I think his reaction to that signing was about the same as yours, a little indifferent, not quite sure what to expect. But you guys are making moves. You can't say that they're not trying. So we'll definitely have more on that as the baseball season gets closer. But I love the hat.
Yeah.
I'm a big Patriot myself. Even with the Yankees emblem on there, I can appreciate the hat. It's that's a stylish hat. I like it. Mad props for that.
Yeah, it's got the red bill, and then if you can look right here, it's got the American League emblem.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
Yeah, cool stuff. It's cool stuff.
Beautiful. So got a good show again today. Lots of football talk, as you can imagine, coming off a pretty eventful, surprising wildcard weekend in the NFL. We'll kind of unpack every game, I think, and get some thoughts on some of the upsets that we saw. Lot of stuff to talk about. We can really go in any direction. I want to start, like we usually do, with just the one that's, for me, most top of mind, the one that occurred last night, the Bucs and the Eagles. I was, just to put it simply, a little shocked at what we saw. Maybe I shouldn't have been, given what really transpired the last several weeks of the season. But I thought come playoff time, things are a little bit different. Some teams save some things for the postseason, but that's really not what we saw last night with the Eagles. They looked like a lifeless team. everything that we saw the last several weeks of the season, it really carried over, I think, in the game last night from the very beginning, from kickoff. It didn't seem like the players really wanted to be there. The coaching staff didn't seem like they had any answers whatsoever. Not to take anything away from the Bucks, who played a very well-rounded game, in my opinion. We'll probably touch on that a bit too, and where the Bucks go from here and what they're up against next week. But I think there's some serious issues on this Philadelphia Eagles team to start the way they did at 10-1. They were atop the league for, I guess, more than half the season. And then just the way that things plummeted, it's not something I've seen in quite some time. We talk about epic collapses here and there, and this one's right up there. It's one for the ages. I think a lot of the blame falls on the coaching staff and Sirianni, and we'll have a lot to talk about throughout today's show with all the coaching changes that have happened in the past week. But I think a lot of the blame has to fall on the coaching staff. It's really, in my opinion, their job to right the ship and right the wrongs that are occurring. You can't say that he didn't know it was coming. They had 6, 7, 8+ games where they were just free falling and spiraling, and they really did nothing about it. They really had no answers as they closed out the regular season. And last night it was again on full display where it just looked like nobody had any answers whatsoever. I feel for guys like Jason Kelce, who now hangs him up. That's a tough way to go out. But the Eagles just looked absolutely lifeless. And I don't know that Sirianni gets fired. I never want to call for anybody's job, but if there's blame to go around, I think the first one who has to answer the tough questions in front of the media, I think you got to start with the coaching staff. But Dan, I want your opinion, because there's, I'm sure, mixed emotions, mixed opinions. Neither one of us are Eagles fans, but I'm curious how you view what we saw last night, because I was a little stunned, even though we saw a lot of that going on at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, to go off what you said, it definitely falls on the coaching staff. And if you remember correctly, last week I wasn't giving up on them. I actually picked them to go long in our bracket. I want to say I got them all to the championship game, upsetting the Niners this week coming up. I mean, they didn't make it, obviously, but I wasn't ready to give up on them. They were 10-1, made the Super Bowl last year. Like I said, started 10-1, and I really just thought that they were tired. I thought that they were kind of playing lackadaisical. They wanted the division over the Cowboys, but they didn't get it. But they still made the playoffs, and I just thought with all their talent, all their veteran leadership, I thought that they would be able to, come in and play the lifeless Buccaneers, because the last time we saw the Buccaneers, they were beating the Carolina Panthers 9-0. So I thought there was no way in doubt that they would show up how they showed up last night. I mean, 9 points, and a couple interesting stats that I heard this morning. They actually lost both their coordinators last year to head coaching jobs. So if you think about it, Shane Steichen, who was the offensive coordinator, went to the Colts, and Jonathan Gadden, who was the defensive coordinator, went to the Cardinals. So, we're talking about coaching staff, but I believe that had a huge impact, because when you lose your top guys, I mean, you can kind of piece it together for, obviously, as we saw this year, 11 weeks, and then 11 weeks it kind of came up and stumped them in the butt. So I think those two coaches leaving really, really, showed it what it was towards the end of the year, because they had everything kind of just lined up. Everything just came and just really made it happen. And it just sucks because, yeah, as you said, Jason Kelce, I believe he's retiring, and he had a hell of a career. So it kind of sucks that he had to go out only putting 9 points. And another funny stat is they went for the 2-point conversion. I don't know if you noticed that. They tried the brotherly shove, and it actually did not work. So I thought that was kind of ironic. Boomer and Gio this morning kind of said it was kind of the icing on the top when they didn't get the brotherly shove on the 2-point conversion, because that's been a lot of chatter that they want to outlaw it. So I thought that was very interesting. But I think everything just, not to repeat myself again, but everything really just dominoed effect with the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator leaving. It kind of just put its ugly foot up, and I think that's what really happened ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, but I guess I would look at another team, to me, perfect example in comparison, on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're having success right now. That's the Buffalo Bills. they're moving on to the next round. And is that because they made the coaching adjustments at the midway point of the season, whatever it was, when they were sort of free falling like the Eagles? They canned their offensive coordinator. I think a couple of the coaches were in the mix there. And ever since then, what are they on? What, 6-7 game winning streak? I think it is
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah.
So isn't it Sirianni's job or the GM's job to take a look at the coordinators? Maybe the people they brought in at the beginning of this year were not the right guys. And when you're 10-1, I guess everything looks all rosy. But then when you're 10-2, 10-3, 10-4, 10-5, whatever it was, they finished 11-6. Don't you have to start taking a closer look at that and do something to salvage your season before the train goes off the tracks? I mean, to me, it just looks like that's what happened. The train went off the tracks and they didn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, it's a great comparison you did because, like you said, the train went off the tracks with the Bills. And what the Bills do, they fired their offensive coordinator and got some new blood in there. And the train, they got some new blood in there. And the train went off the tracks in Philadelphia. And what they did, they just kind of, said, oh, okay, we're just going to try this. We're going to get Matt Patricia in there. We're going to do some different things. But I think it just, the veteran leadership, I want to go back to that. I believe that they just were all pretty tired from the last, 2-3 year run. I mean, all these guys are old. I mean, if you look at the offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, you look at the defensive line, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. I mean, those are 4 cornerstones that have been with the Eagles for 10 plus years. So I think just everything, like a domino effect, I think everything just, came to fruition, and they didn't stop it when they should have. You can kind of compare it to like a bleed. If you didn't put pressure on it, it's just going to keep bleeding out. And I think they just bled out, and, they limped into the playoffs. They thought that they could beat the hopeless Buccaneers, which I'm sure a lot of America did as well. And they just, got punched in the face one last time. And it's going to be interesting what happens with that team because, as I just mentioned, all those old players, it depends on, obviously we know Kelsey's retiring, but what else is going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. You see, they brought in Julio Jones, I guess, for some veteran leadership and extra offensive weapon, but he got banged up, entered concussion protocol, I think yesterday, and never returned to the game. So yeah, you're right. I think some guys, their team might look a little bit different come next year. I'd be interested to see if the front office looks a little bit different too, the coaching staff. I just think if I'm ownership or the GM, I look at the head coach and think that it was a missed opportunity for him to correct some things down the stretch. It's just, to me, it's a bit embarrassing. We look at guys like Bill Belichick. I wanted to touch on that for a minute. And I think with him getting, I guess, the opportunity to step down, that's certainly noble from the Kraft family. But I look at that situation and I think that Kraft knew right away that early on in this season that he was moving on from Belichick. I know they didn't announce it for a while until really the final games of the season, but I think he kind of knew, and I think it's related to what we're seeing in Philly. Whether or not Sirianni gets the axe as well, it remains to be seen, but a lot of these guys who own the teams, the general managers even, these are prideful people. They're competitive. They want to win. So I look at Kraft, and I think he knew that era with Belichick and Brady was over, and he had to make a decision. And I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Eagles do the same thing. This is an organization that won the Super Bowl not too long ago. I think a lot of people expected them to get back to the dance. They were in it last year. They came close. I think this year the expectations were really high, and they didn't come anywhere close to meeting that. It was downright embarrassing. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Sirianni gets the axe as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, you mentioned it. You've mentioned it all shows long. I mean, he's the head honcho. He's the head coach. So he needs to do something better with his coaches. He needs to get in somebody's ass, as they would say. I mean, maybe he was very nonchalantly, which it kind of looked like he did. And maybe because of it, he gets the axe. I mean, he's only been there 3 years. They went to the playoffs each year. So that's something. But still, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles, like you mentioned, they're a prideful organization. They won a Super Bowl a couple years ago. They went to the Super Bowl last year. So he may get the axe just because of his lack of leadership and his lack of, keeping the bus rolling, as they would say, keeping the tires on the bus. And because they derailed and he couldn't get it back on the right track.
Yeah. You mentioned the tush push or the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. I got to ask you, because I can't make sense of it. I've been on record for the last couple years saying that teams go for two way more often than they should, or at least just at the wrong times in games. To me, I would reserve going for two till the very end, until you absolutely have to. I think if you go for two and you don't get it, it changes game situations. It puts pressure on your team. It crushes morale. It just, to me, it changes things. And I don't understand why they went for two yesterday when I think that if they had been successful, they still would have been, they would have been down 5 points, and they missed it and they were still down 7, I believe. So I just didn't understand what 2 points to me would have gained you nothing. I don't understand. It wouldn't have put the game within a field goal. They still would have been down 5 points. I don't know. You recall what I'm talking about, the situation? I don't get why they went for two when they did. I didn't see what they gained there.
I want to say that there was a penalty. So I want to say that they got it instead of the 5-yard line, they moved up to the 2-yard line. So if you, to give a little shout out to New Heights podcast, their fan club is called the 92 Percenters, and they say 92% of the time that brotherly shove works. So they were going off of, 92%, and I think they just wanted to get some momentum, because obviously you saw they gave up a safety. They were kind of playing edgy. And I want to say they wanted to get some momentum, get the 2 points on there. I mean, 2 points is 2 points, but still they maybe think that they can get some success, get some good positive energy on their side by getting the 2-point conversion with the quote unquote brotherly shove. So it's give or take. I mean, you can see the Lions, they go for two, I want to say probably 90% of the time. And you saw what happened a couple weeks ago with the Cowboys. It cost them the game. I mean, it didn't really cost them playoff, as they're still winning, but they costed them the game against the Cowboys because they went for two and not tie it because they lost on 1 point. So it's very, very interesting. I mean, I guess it's a win or lose, but it's very interesting. I don't know why they did it last night, but I think they just wanted to do it for the positivity, as if I had to say.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I can, if they're going with the odds, I suppose that makes sense. That play does seem, obviously was really successful for them all year. It's the other teams that don't institute the brotherly shove the way the Eagles do, that go for two, in my opinion, just at the wrong times or way too often. But just a bad game overall by the Eagles. Be interesting to see what happens in the offseason. Personnel changes, coaching changes. But you mentioned the Cowboys a little bit. That's another game I wanted to touch on. And it's just, as a Giants fan, it's I'm kind of in a state of shock. I didn't expect to see what we saw out of these two NFC East teams. I guess I should be happy. I try not to gloat too much, because the obvious thing to come back at me as a fan is to say, well, your team didn't even make it. So believe me, I keep myself in check, because I really can't gloat too much. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to smile a little bit seeing what happened to both the Eagles and the Cowboys yesterday. And I don't know which one, honestly, is more surprising. Given the way the Eagles were playing, I guess you could kind of have expected them to come a little flat. But the Cowboys at home, they had everything going for them. We talk a lot about how they're just a different team at home. They hadn't lost, I think I saw the stat, at home in 2 years. They were really coming in pretty hot. They had such a fire-powered offense all season long. Dak and CeeDee Lamb were a pretty dangerous combo. Tony Pollard can hold his own. They look like they had a favorable matchup. To me, I don't want to say the Packers didn't deserve to be there, but I think they were rightfully the 7th seed. But we talked about, you just mentioned that the Eagles sort of backed into the playoffs. You could make the argument that the Packers were sort of the opposite. They kind of got hot at the right time. And as we see in all sports, getting right at the right time, getting hot at the right time is sometimes the recipe for success. You can have a shaky start if you hang around and are just good enough to get into the playoffs. If your trajectory is going up, it can take you sometimes all the way. And I think, to me, what happened in Dallas is even more surprising than what happened to the Eagles, just because of how good Dallas was all season, how good they were at home, and really just the difference in the matchup with the Packers. But again, can't take away from anything that from the teams who won. Can't take away from the Bucks, and you can't take away from the Packers. Jordan Love looks like he is flying high. He's making the most of the people around him. I mean, I'm not the biggest Aaron Jones fan, and Romeo Dubs. The weapons he has, they're not Hall of Famers. They're not household names yet. Maybe he'll turn them into that. But I'm really, really surprised at what happened in Dallas. And now you've got the same speculation. People are wondering, does Mike McCarthy come back next year? Or do they clean house and start anew? And I think it's a fair question to ask. How do you let this happen again? They were 12-5 for the third straight year and come up with nothing. This is a team kind of like the Detroit Lions, and we'll touch on them soon, but it's been, I think, since 1997 since they've had a playoff win. I mean, you're getting up there into the 30-year mark like the Lions. And for America's team, I think a guy like Jerry Jones has to demand more. So same thing as Sirianni. I would not be at all surprised if they decide to move on from McCarthy in the offseason, but I want your thoughts because I was just kind of stunned at what we saw with Dallas.
Yeah, I think that was the stunner of the weekend. If you remember correctly, they were up 27-0 at halftime, and it took a last 2-second touchdown from the Cowboys to go score and make it 27-7. And then, it was 48-16 at one point, and the Packers took out all their starters. They took out, everybody, and the Cowboys scored it, made it 32. So if you really think about it, with the starters on the starters, the Packers won 46-16 over Dak Prescott, over the whole team. I mean, you've touched on it. They were, last couple of years, I think they were 10-1 at home, and this was their only loss. So very, very shocking because one, at home, they were playing hands down one of the best teams in the NFL. That's how they were playing. And their defense too. Don't forget about their defense. They were playing lights out at home too, but to give up 48 points to the Packers, I mean, a team that was playing for their lives until the last 3-4 weeks, and then come in there and smoke check them. But that was the biggest shocker. So to go off what you said, I was reading some on Twitter, some guys on there were saying that if he loses to anybody but the 49ers, Jerry Jones might think about firing him, which makes sense because, I mean, this mediocrity is mediocrity, but apparently America's team and Jerry Jones, we know Jerry Jones, he's not going to put up for mediocrity. And who knows if they fire him and go for Bill Belichick. I mean, that could be a pretty interesting little turnaround real quick because he's still out there. I mean, the Falcons are coming strong for Bill Belichick, but if he hangs around and McCarthy gets fired, I could see Jerry Jones waving $120 million contract at Bill Belichick and saying, come over to Dallas. I mean, It's just going to be interesting, but I did want to touch on one thing about Jordan Love. I wanted to read his stats from his last 7 games of the year. So he was against the Chargers. He had 108 rating, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Lions, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Chiefs, 267, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Giants, he had a 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But these last 5 weeks were really impressive. Buccaneers, 284, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Panthers, 219, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Vikings, 256, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Bears, 316, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then the game against the Cowboys, 272, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 157.2. And I want to say a perfect quarterback rating is about 158.6. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's around that number. So, I mean, Jordan Love just really, really showed that he was ready to rock and roll. I mean, those last 7 games, that's 2, 5, 6. That's like 15 touchdowns and 1 interception over the last 7 games of the year. So that was very, very impressive. I mean, he really showed that he was ready to play. A lot of those stats never got done by Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. So
that is pretty amazing. So as you just ran it down, it was the Giants who were the only team who picked him
intercepted him. Yeah.
In the last 7 games or whatever it was. It's pretty wild. Credit to the Giants D, I guess, because they were the one bright spot on that team for, I would say, most of the year. And that says something with the brand of football that Jordan Love is playing. And it's that old adage, you take care of the football and good things will happen. You have to be responsible with the ball as a quarterback. And Jordan Love has been exactly that. And that's pretty remarkable hearing you run down those games, the passing yards, and just no picks, no picks, no picks.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for success, and they're enjoying that right now. He didn't have any picks against Dallas this week, right?
No, he didn't have any picks, so they were playing for their playoff lives against the Buccaneers, the Panthers, the Vikings, the Bears, and now the Cowboys. And he did 2, 4, 7, 9, 12 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in those 5 games. Yeah.
It's impressive. That's impressive.
Very impressive. Yeah.
You got to give him credit because, we could move to this game now or circle back to it. But a guy like Josh Allen, you could argue, was not taking care of the football at times. We talked about him being a little careless with the ball, trying to make, too many things happen, make miracles happen. But Jordan Love, taking care of the football, and they just mopped the floor with Dallas. It's going to be a heck of a interesting matchup, and we'll get to the next week's matchups a little bit later before we close out the show. But interesting to see how they do next week against a 49ers defense that's been pretty damn good throughout the year. If they can put up that many points, I don't think clearly being on the road doesn't bother them at all. So I don't know that there's going to be too much of a home field advantage, but I'll be interested to see if they can put together a repeat performance and if he can continue his streak of no interceptions against the Niners.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I'm looking at their schedule. So they didn't even play the 49ers this year. So it's not like they have anything to go off of. I was looking to see if they even played them. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the Cowboys had a good defense, but the 49ers have a different type of defense, as everybody knows. I mean,
Yeah. You mentioned the Cowboys defense. They were good all year. I guess I expected a guy like Micah Parsons, who people had him as MVP at some point. I don't know if it was this year, maybe last year. Just a guy who's a total game changer. He was held largely in check yesterday, or this past weekend, rather, Sunday. And I don't know if a guy like Bosa and some of the other guys on the 49ers defense are going to meet the same fate. You hold a couple of those guys in check and makes the game a little bit easier for the quarterback. He has time in the pocket to make reads, not really under pressure, doesn't get rattled, and maybe he puts together another 250, 280-yard performance, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks, and could be I expect it to be a low-scoring affair, at least lower than what we saw. I don't think it's going to be 48-32, but maybe he has another day in store for him, like one of the ones you just ran down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the box score. Yeah, Micah Parsons had 2 tackles, 1 solo tackle, and 1 quarterback hit. And I mean, that really speaks minds to the Packers offensive line. I don't know. I wasn't, I was watching it. I had some friends over and I was cooking some food, so I wasn't watching it, 100% and seeing if they were double teaming them or how they were guarding them. But I mean, 2 tackles for Micah Parsons with everybody, how you said, everybody's saying how he's the best defensive player in the league. I mean, that speaks good things for the Packers offensive line. And it's going to be interesting what they do with Bosa, because we know what Bosa can do. We know what their Warner can do at the linebacker position. It's going to be very interesting, but I'm with you too. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game too.
Yeah, they neutralized Parsons, and I think that was a key difference. Couple other games we can get to. I kind of really want to touch on all of them. Maybe we don't have to spend too much time on them, but I just got to ask, what the hell happened in the Texans-Browns game? That one I did not see coming at all. I was pretty high on the Browns. Been a big Texans fan this year because of Stroud on my fantasy team. I really thought with Tank Dell going down, they were losing a big weapon. But some of their other guys, their receivers, have stepped up. Talked about how Singletary's had a bit of a resurgence, and they really they chopped up the Browns offensively a bit. And then the Browns themselves on offense certainly didn't help matters. Joe Flacco, I don't understand it. He had a couple just downright terrible interceptions that were returned for touchdowns. He didn't do himself or his defense any favors. Their defense had a tall order coming into the game, I guess, trying to keep Stroud in check. But when your offense is just giving up points the other way, it doesn't help matters. And that game got out of control pretty quickly, and I didn't see it coming. There was already talks about Flacco coming back next year and signing with somebody, maybe not the Browns, but coming back as a starter. I didn't see it before this game. I just think, he was brought back sort of in an emergency situation. The guy, I think, is 38, probably going on 39 years old. I just didn't see it anyway. But even after this past game, I don't know. Were the last 4 or 5 whatever games that he played with the Browns and had success, was that just sort of a fluke? Was it an anomaly? Or is the Texans defense really that good? I mean, they kind of maybe flew under the radar a little bit with how good Stroud was on offense this year. Maybe people, myself included, weren't giving the defense enough of a credit. So I'm curious. I want your thoughts. I mean, were we all just missing something? I mean, was it that obvious that the Texans were going to have their way with the Browns, or did Flacco and the Browns just put together a dud of a performance?
Yeah, so I was watching the game, and it was back and forth. The first quarter was 10-7, so I thought it was going to be a shootout, and then they break out the tight end screen to Bevan Jordan. I want to say it was for about 60, 70 yards, one play drive, and then I think what happened to Flacco, I think he was pushing, he was pressing, and then I don't know if you remember correctly, but he threw 2 back-to-back pick sixes, and once those back-to-back pick sixes happen, I think that was kind of like the nail in the coffin, because after that, you get 14-7, you go down 24-14, and then the third quarter, they score 14 more points, and before you know it, it's 38-14, and you're still pressing the ball. I mean, those back-to-back picks, I think, really were just the jugular, and it's hard to have a top defense, but it's hard to play when you're down by so much, because what the other team's going to do. They're going to run the clock down, and a lot of guys see that scoreboard. Maybe they're not giving their best effort. Maybe they're only going 80% instead of 100% because the quarterback keeps giving the ball up. And, going off what you said, I think the Texans defense, they're underrated. They had some good players. I mean, Will Anderson was the 3rd overall pick out of Alabama. He was a hell of a player. And you look about their coach was a good player too, D'Amico Ryans. So they had a sneaky good defense, and I think they just caught the Browns on the bad day. Flacco was back to old Flacco. I mean, Flacco looked good for, like you said, the 6 weeks, but as we've talked about him, he's either a gunslinger and he's going to make a lot of mistakes, or he's going to play conservative and get 2 touchdowns, 250 yards, and win the game. But just very interesting game at all. I think that was the second most surprising game for me, because me and you both have been riding the Browns all year long, all shows long. We both were really hype on them. We were both really high on them, and it's just very, very interesting. But I did want to touch on a couple of different stats for the Texans. I don't know if I wanted to mention it last week, but we kind of got away from it. They were the 5th rookie quarterback coach combination to make the playoffs, and the first since 2012, Andrew Luck and Chuck Pagano, to make the playoffs. So that's a pretty interesting stat. And it's only happened, like I said, 5 times: 2008, 2 times, 2009, 2012, and then 2023. So for those 2 rookie head coach, rookie quarterback to make the playoffs, that's a pretty cool stat, I want to say. And also, CJ Stroud became the youngest quarterback to win a playoff game. I don't know if you saw that stat, which is pretty cool.
No, I didn't. So that is pretty
interesting. So it speaks about him, how he's a rookie, but he's playing out there like a gunslinger, like he's a 6-7 year vet. So they got the right dude, and it sucks to say that because he's an Ohio State guy, and everybody knows my thoughts on Ohio State. But I mean, it's very impressive stats between him, and because they had the 1st overall pick last year, or the 2nd overall pick last year. So that tells you how bad they were last year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that Stroud was the youngest quarterback ever to win a playoff game. Kudos to him. He's had a heck of a season, and they're moving on. They got a tall order against the Ravens, that just like the Packers. Jordan Love is having a heck of a season and going up against I guess, arguably the best or second best defense in the 49ers. And you could say the same about the Texans and Stroud. Stroud's had an unbelievable season and moves on against 49ers or Ravens. You pick your poison. It's their 1A, 1B when it comes to defenses, I think. So to me, those are going to be very, very similar matchups this coming weekend when it comes to the divisional games. Couple other games.
I just want to add one more thing on that I'm reading here. He was also the highest drafted rookie quarterback to win in the postseason. So that is pretty cool too. So I believe, the highest drafted rookie quarterback to win in the postseason. That's pretty cool.
When was he drafted? When you say highest, do you mean closest to one or
the second overall pick? And he's the highest drafted rookie. So I guess no other rookies that went one overall made the playoffs and won a playoff game. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty cool stuff.
I'm surprised that that's a stat, because if you're taking guys that high, that's what they're supposed to do, right? I mean, he's not that to take anything away from him, but he was taken second overall, so he's supposed to win, right? I mean,
no, what they're saying as a rookie. I guess there's been no number one overall picks as a rookie to win the postseason, and there's been no number two overall picks besides this guy to win as a rookie in the postseason. Which I mean, it's a weird stat, but I think it's kind of cool. It just speaks for his stats, his his value. But keep going on your stuff.
So when I guess Mahomes wasn't drafted that high, because I was going to say Mahomes probably won a playoff game his rookie year, right? I mean,
he was like number 12.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, what was he, like 8th or 10th or
8th?
Something?
Yeah. So
okay.
But I think he just had to go with the rookie year and highest. So I guess that speaks that there's never been a number one overall pick that's made the playoffs and won in the playoffs. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe next year it'll be Caleb Williams.
You love your boy Caleb. You love your boy Caleb Williams.
I do not love him at all. I don't. I don't love that guy. I hope the Giants, if he's in the cards for them, I hope they steer clear of him.
Yeah.
A couple of the games. So could kind of go with really a few. I want to just touch on what I thought was probably the best game all weekend in terms of competitiveness. I think we talked about it probably shaping out that way last week when we did our show, and to me it lived up to the hype, and that was Lions-Rams. Game ended up just a 1-point difference. It was, to me, everything you could have hoped for. Obviously, if you're a Rams fan, you want to be on the other side of it, but I thought they put out a valiant effort going up against a Lions team that, no pun intended, was just really roaring throughout most of the season. I admittedly was a little shocked that Sam Laporta was in the game. Big reason why I took the Rams in our bracket that we did last week, our picks, was because I was under the impression that Laporta was out. He got hurt last week of the season. I thought it was already announced that he was done for the year. Maybe they meant he was just done for the season and not the playoffs. I don't know. But if they did not have him, I think that would have been a big void, and that's why I was picking the Rams. But still expected to be a very close game, which it was. Everything, again, with that game, to me, lived up to the hype. The Stafford-Goff matchup was just awesome. Both quarterbacks had pretty good games. The Rams, I think, threw everything but the kitchen sink at the Lions. Cooper Kupp was showing his veteran presence out there, catching a lot of balls, being the reliable weapon that he has been for Stafford. Puka Nacua caught several balls, and you saw his explosiveness on display. But to the Lions' credit and to the coaching staff, Dan Campbell, even the fans trying to be that 12th man, they did everything they could to get the victory. And to me, it took a true team effort. The running game was working and firing. Obviously, St. Brown, there's just no denying that guy is an ultimate superstar. And everybody else, including Laporta, their defense. It was a really well-rounded game by the Lions. And to me, that was the best one all weekend. The most competitive, the most fun to watch. I really enjoyed that. And now I'm interested to see what the Lions do against the Bucs next week.
Yeah, it was very interesting. If you look at the scores from last week, I know it's not a crazy stat, but this is the only game that wasn't a 10-point game. If you think about it, everything else, the winners won by more than 10 points, which, says a lot for playoffs, says a lot for parity, says a lot for how the top teams are playing. But yeah, this was the best game. I didn't realize that they ended a 9-game postseason losing streak, the longest in NFL history. I didn't know that was the longest in NFL history. I knew that they haven't won in 31 years. So that was really cool for the fans. Eminem was out there. Everybody loves Eminem. I don't know if you saw, he did a really cool intro video. And I don't know if you saw, they showed a fan in there. I guess he was a season ticket holder for like 70 years or something. And they kept showing him. I thought that was pretty cool for him to see a playoff victory. But
Same. He was in his 90s, I think, right?
Or, yeah, 90s, but I think he was like a season ticket holder for like 70 years or something. It was something crazy. Like I said, I had family friends over, so I wasn't paying attention to it as I should, because I was in and out cooking and everything like that. But yeah, it was cool. I think I mentioned it in our playoffs when we did our brackets. I said I picked the Lions. I know you picked the Rams, and I said what was going to happen was the two-headed monster was going to go off, and Montgomery and Gibbs both had touchdowns. So they just played to their game plan, and Dan Campbell is something else, man. I think if I was ever able to become a head coach, I think that I'd be Dan Campbell, just because I love his tenacity. I love what he says. I just love how he, says what he wants. I mean, remember his interview? He said, "We're going to bite kneecaps. We're going to come at you. We're going to claw you." I think that's cool, and I think that his team really, really speaks of his intensity level, his tenacity, his attitude. And it's very cool for the city of Detroit, very cool for the franchise of the Lions, and I'm excited to run it, and I'm excited to see them go to the Super Bowl and watch my bracket look good. So that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, you had them going to the Super Bowl, right? So
I have them going, not had. Had's a past tense. Have is a present tense. Had is a past.
I like it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good
Yes, sir.
good on you for picking them. And you're right. Like Dan Campbell, to me, he embodies everything about Detroit. Just blue collar guys, blue collar people.
Yep.
With their emotions on their sleeves. They say what they mean what they say. There's not somebody else coined it, and I think it was a pretty good way to describe him. There's just very little gray area with Dan Campbell. He always says what's on his mind. He leaves little to interpretation, which I think is great. And it's clear that the players, the fans, they rally around him. Seems like a likable guy. And unlike Nick Sirianni and Mike McCarthy, some of these other coaches, he seems like he has full support of the players, and that he's got them playing at a really, really high level. There's another coach, speaking of just coaching carousel, what's going on right now. We haven't touched on this game yet, but I wanted to talk about the Chiefs and the Dolphins for a minute. Not too much about the game from my perspective. I can share my thoughts, and I'm sure you have some, but staying on the coaching theme, I got to be honest with you. I think Mike McDaniels is a little overhyped, and I say that for a number of reasons. Number one, people like to talk about him like he's some kind of coaching savant, this offensive genius, and I just look at what he has to work with, and I think that maybe some of that is a little bit of a given. I mean, the guy's team is just absolutely loaded. You've got arguably the best receiver in football. You've got two great running backs. Mostert had a career year, a guy who's been underutilized throughout most of his career. So even though he's 30, 31 years old, he's got very little miles on him. Devon Chain, I think he's the rookie this year, another guy who's just been up and coming. So you got, like you said in Detroit, a two-headed monster at running back for the Dolphins, the best receiver in football. You compliment a guy like Waddle. Their defense is not terrible. So I don't think McDaniel is this offensive genius. It's not like he's, making wonders with a bare cupboard and, cooking these gourmet recipes with just crap ingredients. He's got some of the best players on the field out there to help him look good. And then also too, I just think a little bit of a resume building has to take place. Like what does the guy have to show for it? I mean, we talked this year about how they hadn't beaten teams with a winning record. And, McDaniel's just, to me, he hasn't won anything yet. He hasn't proven anything. So I think earlier this year, we had people anointing McDaniel as the next Belichick, and I was not on that train at all. And now I know they were playing in a tough environment against KC. The conditions were absolutely brutal. It's not easy to beat Mahomes. It's not like KC's not any good. But McDaniel's got a lot to work with. And again, if we're holding coaches accountable on this show, I know I am, then I'm going to lump McDaniels in with all the other guys like Sirianni and McCarthy and say that there's a little bit of a degree of choking that went on when they had an opportunity to beat the Bills in the last week of the season, get that home field advantage. Maybe it's a different story. But alas, you don't do that. You kind of let it slip away. You end up going on the road to KC. And now he's going to be, watching the postseason on his couch from here on out. So that was a game I just wanted to touch on because, sticking with the coaching theme, I just think McDaniels gets a little bit too much credit given what he's done or maybe what he hasn't done and proved so far in his coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it with all these coaches. You're hitting it all, and talking about McDaniel, he really hasn't done anything. I want to say he's been there. This is his second or third year. I mean, they made the playoffs last year. They made the playoffs this year, and with all that talent, with all that speed, you would think that he would be a better. The team would have a better record. I mean, yes, they like we've talked all year. They were 10-1 against teams with winning records, and now 1-7 against teams with winning records. So.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. And I don't know if they pull the plug on him yet. I could see him maybe one more year just because of all that talent, just because I think a lot of people just like him because he's very unorthodox. I mean, you see him when he talks on interviews, he kind of talks like he's half, in the bag, which we know we've talked about it from the first episode. He's been sober and that's what he lives by. But the way that he talks, he's just like, yeah, I should do this, and the sky is green. Like he says some weird stuff, and
Yeah.
I think that gets him a lot of publicity just because of how he is. But I think I don't know if they clear house with him. I think at least one more year. But interesting stat. I've been doing a lot of stats this week or this show. So another stat that I saw, I don't know if you saw it, but when the temperature is below 40 degrees, they are 0-10 in the last 20 years. The Dolphins have. So. I don't know if that just, they are a South Florida team. They are in hot weather, but yeah, 0-10 in their last 10 games under 40 degrees, which is
that's
very
about as stereotypical of a stat as you can get. The Dolphins, the most southernmost team in the country, used to playing in warm weather, and is, what did you say it was? 0-1?
0-10 with games under 40 degrees, below 40 degrees.
Yeah, all the more reason why they needed that win to lock
against
up
the Bills.
division. Yeah, just but I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't think McDaniels gets the axe. I think his loss wasn't as embarrassing, egregious, whatever you want to call it, as McCarthy's was, as Sirianni's was. I give him a stay of execution and give him another year to try to turn it around. But certainly he's definitely got to be feeling a little bit of heat after the way that their season kind of came to a collapse. A couple teams, man, Cowboys, Eagles, Dolphins, these teams that were in the upper echelon, those conversations for Super Bowl contenders throughout most of the season, and now they all find themselves on the golf course. Even the Browns, I guess you could say, maybe to an extent. But I think the last game we really didn't touch on too much, and I got one particular thought about it is Bills Steelers, and that was a game I didn't see being very close on paper. My lock of the week, which we'll get to later in the show, was Bills -10, and they covered. I just didn't see that game being close at all. Kind of went down the way I expected. I know the Steelers made it a little close at the end, and there was certainly some questions about Steelers players in regards to the officiating, which is really what I wanted to touch on. And to me, that's just a bunch of crap. It's just a bunch of excuses. There's a lot of videos and interviews with George Pickens going somewhat viral right now. He feels that he was, interfered with and held and clutched and grabbed, whatever you want to call it, on a few plays. And I was kind of like you. I was, a little bit preoccupied at times throughout this past weekend. So I didn't catch every moment of every game. And I was afraid that I missed some of, I guess, the non-calls from the Steelers, but actually I didn't. I think the most flagrant one that Pickens was upset with happened, I think, later in the game, either the third or maybe the fourth quarter. There was a slant route that he ran and felt that he was tugged by one of the Buffalo defenders, resulted in an incomplete pass, and there was no flag thrown. I saw the call live, and I think Tony Romo thought that there should have been a flag thrown, and maybe it was Sterator or whoever the announcer that does the rules and whatnot thought maybe there should have been one too, but I didn't. And I think, not saying it's right or wrong, but we all know that sometimes refs can put their whistles in their pocket come playoff time more than they do in the regular season. And again, I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but we all know it to be true in really any of the four major sports in this country. So it's nothing new. I think you have to expect it. And to be honest, I think if you're a fan, and I even think if you're a player, I think that's what you want to see. I think you want the players to play. And on that particular play and many of them with Pickens, to me, it just there wasn't enough there to warrant a flag. And I think him just crying in the locker room to reporters about, you can't beat the Buffalo Bills and the refs. To me, that's just crap. It's such a bad look. And, there's stuff floating around in this country about the educational system and how kids these days in school need to go and attend like a finance class and real world classes. I think NFL players need to go to media schools and classes and learn how to talk in front of reporters, because there's just so many guys time and time again, especially receivers, who just come across as whiny divas. And I just think George Pickens' act is just whiny and it's just crap to me. I don't think it holds any water.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a baby all year long. I want to say a couple weeks ago, I believe one of the Steelers guys called him out because there was a fumble and he kind of, walked off the field, didn't run after the player to tackle him when the other team had the fumble. And then yesterday, I mean, he threw his helmet 4 or 5 times. I mean, he's been a baby. And I was watching with, a friend of the show, Sean Fleming. He's a big Steelers guy, and his brother-in-law watched him at Georgia because he's from University of Georgia. And I guess he was a diva at University of Georgia as well. So,
yeah,
you can have all the talent in the world, but being a diva, it's not going to get you anywhere. And it's definitely not going to get you anywhere with the Steelers, because the Steelers, as as everybody knows, they're a no-nonsense franchise. So I don't know if he's going to survive. I mean, he's still probably on a rookie contract, so he might survive. But still, he doing that kind of crap with the Steelers is not going to get you anywhere quick. And Mike Tomlin, we know Mike Tomlin, he's not going to have it. And he's had a history of calling people out and sitting people or even cutting people. I mean, look what they did with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was a diva. He wanted X amount of money, and they said, okay, see you later, buddy. You're not going to get the money from us. So they're no nonsense. And it's just, very interesting. But yeah, that game, the Steelers kind of just shot themselves in the foot. They were driving, and then they threw an interception on like the 5-yard line. That acrobat of interception by the Bills. I mean, that costed them, and more interceptions by Mason Rudolph. And I think they were just overwhelmed. I think Mason Rudolph was overwhelmed. I think the Bills just came to play. I mean, they're on a different level right now, and they're just rocking and rolling. They were home, which helped, but they're on a different level. I could see them. We'll talk about this later on in the show, but against the Chiefs, that might be the best game of the whole postseason, if you ask me. But we'll touch on that here in a little bit. But that's going to be one hell of a game. And I just think that the offensive coordinator move that you've talked to, that I've talked about, I think it's really paying dividends for Josh Allen's confidence, for the whole team's confidence, and just how everybody's playing, because it's like they're doing a well-oiled machine. All the cylinders are rocking, and they came to play yesterday.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good point. And as we talked about earlier, the Eagles, as we know, didn't make those adjustments, and we could make the argument that they should have, and maybe that would have changed things, because it certainly looks like, to your point, that it did with the Bills. Sometimes, you get rid of the stink in the locker room or the booth, whatever it is. In this case, it was the coaching staff. And you're right. Like, it's helped Josh Allen's confidence. Maybe it's also been the wake up call for Allen, because when a coach or coordinator gets fired, then, as a player, if things don't get fixed, then you're next, So I think maybe Allen looked at that as, hey, no excuses now. I've got a new coordinator. I've got to start producing. And he has. He's taking care of the football now. He's looked like the Josh Allen of old, where he's just taking the team on his back, running for touchdowns, throwing for touchdowns. It's a different Josh Allen than what we saw at the beginning of the season. I think you're right. I think a lot of that has to do with the coordinator change that they made. And I think, again, you're right that this Bills-Chiefs game is going to be a treat for football fans all over. Those two teams have met in the playoffs a few times the past couple years. We did our picks last week. I think it's the Bills finally their time where they get past the Chiefs, they get over that hurdle. And it'll be interesting. It's going to be, I think, a treat for all football fans to see that game.
Yeah, I think so too. And, I have that at the bottom. I don't know if you want to get a little recap of our bracket, but I can go ahead and share my screen and we can kind of see the quick standings real quick. I don't know if anybody can see it, but, right now we have Ryan Peoples. I don't know if you know Ryan Peoples. Is that one of your people?
I have no idea.
Okay. But my dad is MOB9. He watches the show religiously. So he's tied for first with 200 points, with 200 points remaining. And then friend of the show, Chris Dolan, he's got 150 still alive with the Ravens pick. Neighbor Fenway, Max Brady, he's rocking and rolling. It looks like your dad's up there. Your dad put 2 in, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then you got me with the Ravens at third. And then we got Jeffrey Creason, who we've mentioned a lot, friend of the show. He picked the Cowboys. He's gone. My brother also picked the Cowboys. They're looking gone. And then you're pulling up the rear. But a lot of football to be played. But I think we got, what did we get, 10 people in here. So that's pretty impressive. And I think people are enjoying it. I know when I sent it out, everybody was looking forward to doing it. So it's very cool. We'll try to – we were talking about it. We might do the same thing with NHL hockey. Probably do the same thing with NBA basketball. We could do this little live bracket thing, but I think a lot of people enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been. I know I personally enjoyed it. So if no one else is, hey, too bad for you. But I'm enjoying it, and that's me saying that despite the fact that I am, like you said, pulling it up the rear. Looking at it on paper, I was looking at my bracket and I was like, wow, I didn't get a lot right, and now seeing it in the standings, percentage wise. The two at the top are 91.4% with 200 points. Yep. I'm at 35.5%. That's pretty brutal, but still alive. I'm looking at a couple people who had the Cowboys, I guess, going all the way.
Yep.
My champ is still there, and just me and one other have
your dad
San Fran as the winner. Yeah, so I still got a puncher's chance despite a pretty miserable first round there, but ton of fun. I'm enjoying this.
So much fun.
We'll be doing more brackets. We'll be a month or two away from March Madness. We'll do a bracket for that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll do an NHL playoff bracket, probably NBA. We'll just it's always a good time. People play along with us.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And then we don't want to talk money, but maybe we could talk about maybe getting some bucks in there and doing something fun for the show, or doing something fun for a listener, maybe like a gift card or something like that. But that's here nor there. But that's more to come. Just kind of making it fun. But
good idea. I like that a lot. Yeah.
But we're at the hour mark. I'm getting pretty thirsty myself. What about you?
I'm always thirsty, and now is, I think you're right, a good time for a break.
All right, let's do it.
Take a short time out. We'll come back, do our beer reviews, and then spend a little bit more time on the upcoming matchups this week and a little preview of the actions. So.
Yep.
Stick around. We got more to come. We'll be back in a few.
Yep.
Had a largemouth bass bust my line. A couple beautiful girls tell me goodbye. Trucks break down, dogs run off. Politicians lie, been fired by the boss. It takes one hand to count the things I can count on. No, there ain't much man that ain't ever let me down. Long neck, ice cold beer never broke my heart. Like diamond rings and football teams have torn this boy apart. Like a neon dream, it just don't know me. The bars in this guitar. And long neck, ice cold beer never broke my heart.
Oh yeah.
You know what time it is.
Yes, we
Beer
do.
thirty.
Yes.
Beer
When-
time.
yeah, the other good time is that you're close enough to an ice cold beer than not to an
Right.
ice cold beer. Did you ever think about that?
I'm past the across the halfway mark of dry January, so looking forward to the end of my time served, if you will.
Yeah.
It's not been as hard as I thought, but I do miss it a little bit. I'm not going to lie, especially with all the great sports action. It's nice sitting down at the bar and having a cold one. It's nice having a glass of wine, making some dinner, and having a little pasta.
yeah.
So I miss it. I do miss it a little bit. And honestly, in this time of year, it's even a little cold here in Florida, and I miss sitting out by the fire and having a nice cider. But I do feel good actually going a couple weeks now without a drink, and I'm going to try to make it the rest of the month and complete my dry January task. But
Yeah.
I'm still participating in our beer reviews. For those who have maybe missed an episode or two, I have been doing dry January, and I've been doing some non-alcoholic beers on the show. And I've got one I think that people can relate to. So Dan, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first. I don't know who went first last week, but
Well, since
You
you've been doing non-beers, you've been going first.
Yeah,
We're
I thought
keeping
so. So I'm
yeah,
going to
keeping the beers for me.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think everybody can kind of relate to this. If you missed last week's show, I did one that was completely off the wall. It was called Bitburg. It was a German-style Pilsner, obviously non-alcoholic. It's pretty good. I think if I'm looking at notes, I gave it an 8.2. It was pretty good, but didn't expect anybody to really know that. Don't know if it's something that you can necessarily get locally. So I wanted to switch it up a little bit and get something that I know people can probably relate to. And I'm going to show you on the label here, Dan, see if you can see this.
Oh, Budweiser Zero. Look at you, man.
So this
Wow.
I picked for that exact reason, because everybody knows Bud, but not everybody knows their zero beer. I feel like all the major brands have to have one nowadays. Heineken's had their 0.0 for a while. I tried that, and it's okay, but I wanted to give the Budweiser one a shot. This one's 50 calories. It's actually a true 0.0. It's not, the O'Doul's that has 0.5 or whatever. But 50 calories, no sugar, and it's Budweiser Zero. So
the carbs. Last week we talked about the carbs. Are the carbs high on that too?
Yeah. So you'd probably, I guess, have to look at the.
No big deal. I just know that we've been talking about it with the non-alcoholic beers.
It doesn't say it on the label. It says zero sugars, but it doesn't say the carbs. And now you got me wondering, because you're right. Like the carbs were higher to make up for, I think, the alcohol. You'd probably have to look at the case to actually see that. So I'll do a little homework and see what I can find on that. But give this baby a shot.
This says net carbs 12 grams.
That's pretty close to, I want to say the Bitburg was 15, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty close. So, we all kind of know what it should taste like, what it should look like. So I'm not going to dissect anything like that, but dive right in and tell you what it tastes like.
Yeah. How is it?
It's not bad, honestly.
Because I love me some Budweiser Heavy, so I'm curious how that would taste, because I'm a huge fan of Bud Heavy.
Let me give it another one before I give it a rating.
I will tell you what, it looks like a Budweiser. I mean, it's got that golden color that everybody knows about Budweiser.
It looks like a Budweiser, and it tastes like a Budweiser.
I think Budweiser regular has more head, so I think that's the difference. Is what I'm looking at.
If you saw this pour, I mean, there was virtually none. It's not flat. It's just for whatever reason there's no head with this one. But yeah, it looks like a Budweiser, tastes like a Budweiser. It's really exactly what you would expect. It's pretty good. I'm trying to compare it to. I gave last week that German beer a pretty high score. And to be fair, I think I got to go similar with this one because it's not worse. It's not worse than that German Pilsner I had. Honestly, if you were again doing dry January, or if you're just somebody who likes the taste of beer but can't have a drink, this is one that you would get. To me, this is better than Heineken 0.0. I know I didn't do that review on this show, but I have had it and I didn't love it. This Budweiser Zero is pretty good, all things considered. So I'm gonna give it just a little bit of an edge over last week, which I rated an 8.2. This one I'm gonna give an 8.4. It's pretty damn good, actually. It's quite good. So I'm going 8.4 for Budweiser Zero. As you mentioned, 12 carbs, 0.0. It's 50 calories. It's not bad.
I like it. So this one I'm very excited about. It's called Evil Twin Brewing, and it's blue raspberry. So I don't know if you can kind of see it, what it looks like. It's a kind of a cool little blue raspberry can. It's by Evil Twin, and it's a sour Indian pale ale with raspberry flavor and 6% alcohol. So I'm pretty excited about this one. As you know, I like my sours. So let's go ahead and see what we got. I think it's going to be a pretty cool color. Yep, that's a cool color. Let me see if you can see it.
We haven't, I don't think either one of us. Wow, look, that looks like straight slime.
Yeah, it's pretty cool looking, man.
That looks like, I don't know if that looks like slime crossed with like gasoline or is that, wait a minute, is that coolant from an engine?
It looks like it, man. You know what it smells like off the rip? It smells like those blue sour warheads. Remember those? The candies? Yep. That's what it smells like off the rip. Yep. So let's see what we got here.
Man, I can't believe that's so green.
Holy shit.
Good?
That's exactly what it tastes like. Is a blue sour warhead. Really? Holy moly. Wow. That is delicious.
Looks like antifreeze. Doesn't make you, it's not making you pucker too bad.
Not too bad, but it's a sour warhead. The blue sour warhead, my man. That's exactly what this is.
So it's kind of punchy.
Yeah, 8.7 for me, dog.
0.7. I think we've got a new record. I think that's the highest either one of us have gone.
I think I did a 9.0 with one.
You might have. Okay.
But I've been, I mean, growing up, I was always a sucker for sour warheads, and blue was one of my favorites, and that's exactly what this tastes like. Wow.
8.7.
That is delicious.
Evil Twin Sour IPA. What was the alcohol content on that?
6%.
6%. Okay.
That is delicious.
Wow.
Oh, and they're from, sorry, I didn't say where they were from. So they're from North Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
Evil Twin. Wow.
Nice.
Very delicious beer.
Pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say very unique too.
Yeah, I got two more from my pick that I did from the local liquor store here in St. Augustine. So I got a fun one for next week that's going to be interesting as well. But yeah, very good. Cool. So if we could think of some blue sour warheads, that's exactly what it tastes like, just in liquid form. So
nice. I like it. Cheers.
Cheers, brother. Yeah, man. Oh, that's good. Wow, that's refreshing.
Yeah,
that is refreshing.
So, obviously, we were pretty NFL football heavy last week. Stick on that theme, and I think we can.
I do have some hockey stats. I do have a hockey stat that I thought was pretty cool, but we can do NFL or whatever.
We can spend some time talking a little bit of hockey, and then we'll get to our picks and brackets and whatnot. But yeah, hit me with some hockey.
So I took this screenshot from Instagram As of January 12th, this was the first time in NHL history where 4 teams owned simultaneously winning streaks of at least 7 games, and it was the 9-game win streak from the Panthers, 9-game win streak from the Oilers, 8-game win streak from the Kraken, and 8-game win streak from the Jets. So that was I saw that the other day on Friday, and I was like, I got to take a screenshot of this. I thought it was really cool. Yeah, first time 4 teams have a winning streak of at least 7 games in NHL history.
So I am looking at the standings now, and I thought you didn't the Kraken beat the Islanders last night, or was that the night before?
We got beat 5-0 last night, but who did we play?
Oh, the Kraken lost to the Penguins. That's right. I'm sorry. It was the Wild that beat you guys.
Wild, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was the Kraken. So the Kraken did lose. So the reason why I mentioned that is because so you said there was 4 teams that had those streaks, but as of right now, the
only team is the Oilers.
Standing is the Oilers. Yeah, the team that you saw. I mean, we talked about it a bit. They had a pretty impressive streak about a month or so ago, right? Around the time you saw them, they had it snapped, but they really followed that up with another 10-game winning streak. Really impressive what they've been able to do. They're a ways behind the Canucks and only 8 points behind Vegas, who's occupying the second spot in the Pacific, but they have 5 games in hand. So actually, if they won outright their next 5 games, they could vault all the way to second in the Pacific, and they'd be behind only the Canucks, who are kind of far and away the best team in the league right now. But yeah, it's been impressive what the Oilers have done on their streak. They're finally seeming like they put it together, but I'll be honest, they're one of those teams that, to me, they're kind of like the Leafs, another Canadian team who just has so much talent. They're paying some superstars a lot of money, and they can have all the regular season success they want, but until they actually get past the first or second round of the playoffs, I think nothing else really matters. I hate to say it. I don't want to say the regular season, their success, what they're doing is for naught, but they really have to show something in the playoffs, I think, given what they have with McDavid and Draisaitl and all these other guys. It's impressive, yes, but I think they still have a lot to prove.
Yep, and I think I texted you this the other day. They are 17-3 in their last 20 games, which very, very impressive. And their first win is when I saw them in Washington, and the 3 losses were against the Bolts, the Panthers, and the Islanders. And I mean, to go 17-3 in 20 games, that's really impressive. 1, and really impressive 2 when it's hockey, because we know how physical hockey is. But I thought that was pretty cool stuff.
It is, yeah. I mean, the Panthers had their streak snapped against the Devils. I was really happy to watch them over the weekend. They got I was at the game in Tampa. They went to overtime. It was a good game between the 2 teams, especially considering how injury plagued the Devils have been this year. Lost in overtime, but they followed that up against a good Panthers team on the road and snapped their streak that you were talking about. The Kraken had their streak snapped, I think last night, the game that I was thinking about. I thought it was the Islanders, but they lost to the Penguins. And who was the other team you said? Kraken?
Winnipeg.
Yeah, they're another team. Yep, and they must have just had theirs snapped as well, because they're 8-1-1 in their last 10, and they're on a 1-game losing streak. So all these teams that you're referring to, they all kind of had their streaks snapped around the same time. Winnipeg is another team who is really surprising me. I guess, again, one of those teams that also has a lot to prove. It's funny, 3 Canadian teams, but Winnipeg historically, the last 5-7 years, something like that, they've always been around the conversation of the playoffs. They've had some strong teams, but not really had much postseason success. I'll be honest, I didn't expect them to be atop the Central this year and almost atop. They have 2 games in hand on the Canucks, so they really technically could pass them for best in the West right now. There was a lot of conversations about the Devils this year, even before the year, making a move for a goalie, and Connor Hellebuck was a target of that speculation. I've never been a big Hellebuck fan, really, because of his lack of postseason success. But this year, he's kind of put it all together, and he's, I think, put that team on his back. So I have to give him credit where credit's due. Winnipeg, I mean, halfway through the season, they're almost best in the West right now, and it's surprising. So kudos to them.
Yeah.
The Oilers, the Canucks, some of those other teams that I didn't think would be up there.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to mention, you were saying how the last 6-7 years they've always been a staple to make the playoffs, and they've had Connor Hellebuck as their goalie. I'm looking at his stats right here. He's been in the league since 2015, and besides 2015, he's played in at least 45 games or more in every single season, and he always has a pretty good save percentage. I mean, I'm looking at his too. He's never been below 918 has been his lowest save percentage. So
Yeah.
he's the anchor, to go off of how they've been able to make the playoffs and how they've always been around. He's been the anchor, and it's going to be interesting. But yeah, they always flunder. They always they always get a flat tire in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting what happens this year. A couple years ago they had the really good player that they traded. Who was that guy? They traded him to the Blue Jackets. Remember the top pick
Patrick
that they had?
Laine?
Yep, Patrick Laine. Yeah. So they kind of, they got a pretty good return in that, but it's just Connor Hellebuck. He's been there forever, and they got another young kid named Kyle Connor. He's a good player. So this might be their year. I mean, Hellebuck's 37 years old, so he doesn't have much left in the tank. But
exactly. And that was really the reason why I didn't want the Devils to go after him, because he's not going to be around too much longer. They need a guy who is an up and coming goalie, which is why I think they should stick with either Schmid or Nico Dawes. Some of those younger guys, give them a shot, see if they could develop into something, because they've tied up a lot of their money into guys like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meyer. They had a lot of money to spend. In my opinion, they did spend it wisely, but they don't really have the money to throw at a goalie like Hellebuck. So yeah, like you said, it'll be interesting. Looking at the East real quick. We're at the halfway point of the season, so still a lot of hockey left to be played, but I just have this uneasy feeling for you and I, fans of who we're fans of, the Devils, the Islanders. I'm afraid that one of our teams is going to miss out on the postseason, just the way that this is developing. The East is so tight right now. The Rangers have thankfully come back to earth and not been playing great hockey, but the Flyers, I think that they've exceeded expectations this year by leaps and bounds. I think even the Red Wings have exceeded expectations. To be honest, the Penguins, with the way that their core is aging, Crosby, Malkin, some of those guys, I didn't expect those three teams to be having the seasons they're having, and it's made things really tough for the Lightning, the Islanders, the Devils, those couple teams that I really thought would be, tops in the Metro and the Atlantic in their divisions or close to it. Looking at it now, I mean, you've got the Wings and the Lightning both at 49 points in the 1 and 2 wild card spots. They do have played a couple more games than our teams, the Devils, the Islanders, even the Penguins. It's just really, really close. I just have a feeling that one of our teams, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen, but I think there's a pretty decent chance that we could be on the outside looking in. I know if it's the Devils, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Now, I've said it before, they've had a very, very bad month or so of luck when it comes to injuries, but no excuses. The expectations were really, really high this year. So much talent on their team. They had a great season last year. They were third in the East, rather. But they ended up coming away, beating the Rangers in the first round, fell short to the Hurricanes. But this year was supposed to be the year that they have even more success.
Moved over.
Yeah, and so far, it's not been the worst season, but it's been a bit of a disappointment. And there's a good half of the season left to be played, but I'm just a little nervous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm very nervous with the Islanders. I mean, I've mentioned it, probably a handful of times on our shows. They have that core, and I don't mean to keep going back to it, but they have that old core that, has been there when they made the championships against the Lightning, when they made the back-to-back and lost, obviously. But they have those guys, Cal Colorbook. They got Matt Martin. They got Andres Lee. They still got Barzal. I mean, he's young, but still he's been around. So it's going to come push to shove. And we know about Lou Morelli. We know that he is getting up there in the age too. So he might shake some things up if they don't start getting out of this wild card or start playing some substantial hockey, because he wants to win. And, we want to win as a franchise. And with this old core, something has to happen. We have 2 good goalies. We have decent defense. I mean, not the best. I mean, our goal differential right now is -18. So our defense needs to step up. I mean, we talked about that, I want to say, a couple of weeks ago. Both of us did.
Yeah.
But, besides that, you got to do something. I mean, Barzal, he's wasting away with that talent. I mean, you've seen how crazy he is when he's 100% healthy. I mean, he's probably one of the top 5 quickest skaters in the NHL, in my thoughts. So,
yeah,
I think push has got to shove. I think something's going to happen with them. Either, they go on a nice little run and get up there, or Lou Morello shakes up the team.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you look at the goal differential. That's always one of the telltale signs.
Yep.
All 6 of the teams, the 3 leading the Atlantic and the 3 leading the Metro, are all in double digits positive territory when it comes to goal differential. Even the Wings and the Penguins are +11, +16. But
look at the West.
Lightning -3
for the Canucks. Sorry, I was scrolling down. That's wild. +54. Yeah, that's wild.
They are just they're doing something special there in Vancouver. Not quite on the level of what the Bruins were doing last year. The Bruins had, I think they ended the season over +100 or something crazy like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a pretty good indicator of how your team's playing. The reason why I have a little hope,
the Bruins were 128, just to let you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's just incredible what they did. If you look at that, the other end of the spectrum, San Jose is already -93. I mean, that's
that's wild.
Brutal. Yeah.
And then you guys took out freaking Connor Bedard. I mean, poor guy, he had to break his freaking jaw. So, that sucks. But hey, it is what it is. It's not a little boy's game, it's a man's game. So that's what happens.
That's right. And they'll be in line for another good pick come this season. So that's what it takes sometimes to build a competitive team, is you get a couple draft picks, you luck into some number 1 overalls. It's a lottery system, but you get a couple number 1s or number 2s, and your outlook can change pretty quickly.
That's what happened with the Oilers, and that's what happened with the Red Wings right now. I mean, the Oilers, they had your boy that you had on what was his name? The guy that you guys had on the Devils, turned him to the Bruins, and then the Coyotes. You brought his jersey, number 9.
Oh, Taylor Hall, yeah.
Yeah, they had him. They had McDavid. They had Nugent Hopkins. They had Draisaitl. So, they did that, and now they're playing really well. And the Red Wings, they had a bunch of young players too, and now they're playing pretty decent. So
Devils too. Jack Hughes and Nico.
Yeah, Devils too. Yep, that's right. Yeah. Just a matter of time.
It is, yeah. So we'll be talking some hockey as the season moves along, but we still got half the season to come, and the All-Star break will be coming up. So teams will make some adjustments. Teams will get healthy, and it'll always be a fun stretch as we come into the winter and spring months. So
yeah, for sure, definitely.
Transition back to football. I think we'll take a quick look at some of the upcoming matchups. I want to make picks again. I'll recap.
I think I went 1-1. Yeah. Recap us last week.
Yeah, you did go 1-1. So last week, we ended the regular season with our picks. I edged you out just barely by a game. I was even on the season, 14-14. You were 13-15. My lock of the week, we talked about it earlier already tonight, was Buffalo -10. I just thought that game was going to be a bit of a runaway, kind of lopsided. It sort of was. So I got that one right. And then I had Rams +3. I kind of thought that they were going to win again. That was under the guise that Laporta wasn't playing. But I did get the 3 points, and I ended up needing it. Detroit won by 1. So I covered there with the points, thankfully.
Yep.
So I went 2-0. You had Green Bay getting 7.5, and they didn't even need it. We know what happened in that game. So you got that one right, which was great. And then unfortunately, you barely missed Detroit. You were given 3, and obviously we just mentioned they only won by 1. So you were close. You went 1-1. I went 2-0. So I pick up another game on you. If we're continuing from the season,
we are.
I'm 16-14. You're 14-16. So. Still very much in this thing. We're only 2 games apart.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I've gone like 4 straight weeks where I've missed it by 1 point. The
You've
spread.
had some crap luck. I will
Yeah,
give you
I
that.
have.
It's been
So
pretty
not that it
crappy.
matters, but still, it's
Yeah.
interesting. That's why we do these locks and upsets. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
And if you're ready, let's get our picks in while we're on the subject, and we can have some
Yeah, I'm in.
closing thoughts on some games. But I'm going to give you the honors because
Okay.
I'm up a couple games and I don't know who went first, but I'll give you the floor if you want to give me your lock or give me your upset, whichever one you want to go with first. Some interesting games.
So I'm going to do my upset with the Texans plus 7.5. I think Baltimore's going to win, but I think the Texans are going to come out slinging.
You have Texans plus 7.5?
That's what I got on ESPN. What do you got?
Wow, I have plus 9. Let me refresh it, and
Okay.
maybe the odds changed. If I
Where
got
are you on
9,
NFL?
no, I'm on my site. I'm on Bet Online where I bet, and they've got it at plus 9.
Let me look at
So
NFL.com too. Hold on one second.
I'm gonna give you what I see because this is a live odds right now.
Hold on one second.
That's pretty
ESPN is
rare.
too.
ESPN is what?
ESPN is pretty live too usually.
I know. I'm saying, yeah. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying it's weird that they would be so far off. I mean, sometimes half a point, maybe a full point, rare occasions, but 1.5 points. That's that tells me that they don't have a great feel for this game.
NFL.com doesn't have the spread.
Well, what about Hard Rock?
Yeah, let's see what Hard Rock says. Give me 1 second.
We need the Jeopardy music right now.
All right. NFL. All right. They got plus 8.5.
Plus 8.5. Okay, so that's closer to my 9. So I'm giving you the 9. If you want the spread, I'm gonna give you the 9.
That's fine. I appreciate it.
Your upset is Houston plus 9, which it's hard to not get down on that. I mean,
we're going to start having the same stuff since there's not many games.
Yeah,
so
I think maybe next week, maybe we just both pick the same games and we just maybe we could even invoke the over unders or something. We'll find a way to make it work. We're going to run out of games.
My lock, I'm going to keep running my Lions. I got them minus 6.5 on ESPN.
Yep, that's.
Do we need to go to Hard Rock again? Okay.
Nope, you got it. Detroit.
Yep. Minus 6.5. I'm gonna ride them, dude. I'm riding them hard to the Super Bowl. I'm gonna ride them. I like the way they play.
Yeah, you got them in your bracket going all the way. So yeah, might as well take them as your lock.
Yes,
I think that's a good pick. I think the magic in Tampa probably comes to an end. I think they got a nice boost playing at home and playing against an Eagles team that just looked really lifeless. I think Detroit
lethargic. Yeah, yep.
Probably, I think Detroit wins the game. I could see them winning by 7. I could see you covering that lock. So I like it. So, man, looking at some of these other games, I don't hate. I don't hate the spreads that you left me with.
Yeah, I was looking at those too.
Looking at the Bills Chiefs. Maybe am I missing a couple games? How many games? Well, no, we do only have 4 games. So
yeah, there's only 4. Yep.
Yeah. So I like the lock. I have Bills minus 2.5. Is that what you have?
I got a minus 3, but if you want to take 2.5, because that half point might get you, so I'll give you 2.5.
Yeah, if you don't mind giving me that. And again, this is a weird spread where.
Let me look at Hard Rock and see where Hard Rock's at.
Yeah,
Hard Rock's minus 3, but we'll give you 2.5. You're good.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because it works the opposite way where you're getting more points with Houston and I'm giving less. So,
well, that half point will save you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to go Buffalo, my lock. I like sort of like you, riding them. I think they beat the Chiefs. And if they do, I probably see them winning by a field goal or so. So I like that lock. And then if we're going upset, I mean, this honestly wouldn't be the worst. Maybe this just worked out the way it's supposed to work out, even with you picking your picks, because trying to be different than you, I'm not. I got to be honest. I don't hate Packers. Plus, I have plus 9.5. Is that what you have?
I got 8.5, but I'll give you 9.5. Let's go to Hard Rock.
Yeah. So something with Bet Online. When we're done with the show, I might have to
Nine and
jump
a
on
half.
and plunk some money. You have
Nine
that?
and a half, 9.5 on Hard Rock. So I don't know why
Okay.
ESPN is off, because ESPN, it says odds by ESPN Bet. It's that new thing that they got going on. So
Okay.
I don't know why their odds are like that, but
Yeah.
interesting. Weird.
Yep. It is weird.
Usually they're pretty
Yeah.
spot on, but that's two. That was what, 3 points for me and 1 point for you. That's weird.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to take them. I'm going to go with Green Bay getting 9.5. I mean, I think they have a legitimate shot where
We do.
they could keep it within 5-6 points, and certainly if they keep it within 9, then I'm good. So we'll see. Sets up for some good matchups, and we both pick some different games. Like we said, well, next week we'll only have 2 games, so we'll probably have to
Over-unders.
do.
That'll be fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
over-unders will be fun. Or
I like that. Over-unders are pretty challenging. Historically,
Yep.
I'm not great at those, but so yeah, I mean, we just kind of touched on them before we close out the show. I mean, what do you think about some of these games? I guess, which one are you most looking forward to seeing?
We touched on it. Last game of the day, last game of the weekend, Chiefs and Bills. I think that's going to be a doozy. I think that's going to be an instant classic. I don't know if you remember some of my friends who I grew up with, Jeff Creason, he's going to remember Instant Classic on ESPN Classic. I think that's going to be an instant classic, I believe. I think it's going to be close as we thought, 3 points, and it's going to be a good one. And I think the second best game, I think that the Ravens and Texans are going to be a good game. Not even because I took them as my upset, but still, I think the Texans are a team to be reckoned with. I believe with the combination of C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, they got their taste of playoff winning and playoff football. They're out to play with a vengeance, and I just like the way that they play with nothing to lose. So I think those are my 2 favorite games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. For me, I think I'm most looking forward to the Texans, Ravens. I'm really interested to see how Stroud does against a tough defense on the road, especially with the Ravens, getting that bye, being pretty well rested. Lamar talked about it a couple shows ago. He was sort of my pick for MVP because he's not really done anything wrong this year. And he's, in my opinion, not had a ton to work with. I mean, again, just thinking about who he has at receiver, there's just not really any household names. I mean, again, I know Zay Flowers has had a good year, but and Odell Beckham Jr., an aging guy that didn't play much, lost J.K. Dobbins, lost Mark Andrews. I mean, Lamar has just really put that team on his back. So that is a game I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, Packers, see if Love can repeat against a good defense on the road again. Bucks Lions, I think, should be a pretty good game. I mean, we didn't talk much about what Baker Mayfield's done, but I think he deserves a lot of credit. They were having him compete for his job at the start of the season against Kyle Trask, and he's put together a pretty good performance. So the one thing about these games, we've got 4 of them coming up this week. I don't think you could say that really there's any team that doesn't deserve to be there. I think all these teams have had some great seasons, some great storylines have been built in. So again, if you're a football fan, really, really awesome games coming up this weekend. So kind of must see TV.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about last week when we did our bracket, anything can happen in the playoffs, and we saw that with the Packers, we saw that with the Texans, and we saw that with the Eagles. Playoff football is a different beast. Anything can happen.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any parting thoughts before we say goodnight?
I don't think so. I just did want to touch. We haven't touched on NBA in a while, so I just wanted to touch on my my 2 boys, my Oklahoma City Thunder. They are 27-12, 1 game out of first place in the West. And my Orlando Magic, they've kind of hit a couple speed bumps. They're now 22-18, But, not to go back from what we said, but all I need them to do is make the playoffs. And I said that from, week one. So I'm still going to watch my boys.
Yep.
And, the Celtics are looking good, 31-9. The Bucks are looking good. So the top three in the East are who we thought was going to be there. I mean, the Bucks, Celtics, and the 76ers. But the one that's really interesting is the Western Conference. I mean, you asked me a couple weeks ago about the Denver Nuggets if they had a chance to repeat, which I told you they really do because they kept pretty much their same team. But 1 and 2, I mean, the Timberwolves and the Thunder. I mean, I knew about the Thunder, but those two teams that lead the Western Conference, that kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, the Timberwolves are a young team, and so are the Thunder. And I think it's really cool for both franchises because a couple years ago they got Anthony Edwards, the Timberwolves, as a number 1 overall pick, and he's thriving right now. And the Thunder last year they got Chet Holmgren, who had to sit out the whole year because of a Liz Frantic injury in his foot, and now he's back and he's got a good chance to win Rookie of the Year. So it's very, very exciting stuff. It's got some new blood in the Western Conference, which is cool, and it's fun to watch. It's they're going to start. We'll start circling more about hockey and basketball, as you said. Once playoff NFL football ends, we'll start focusing more on NBA, focusing more on NHL. But it's turning out to be a really good year. It's going to be some competitive basketball.
I was going to say the same. They're also at the midway point of their season, the NBA. So a lot of basketball still to be played. One team that catches my eye. We spent a little bit of time on it a couple shows ago. I had asked you the question about the Lakers. If they were going to be able to put together a run, because LeBron's future, we think he's coming back, wants to play with his son, but you never know. He's up there in age. He set the record for most points, so maybe he doesn't stick around. He's in my opinion, he's the NBA's equivalent to Ovechkin in the NHL. A guy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
About the same age, basically, and you just don't know how long they're going to be able to stick around. And the Lakers are in that fringe playoff spot. They're in the 10 spot, so they would have that, I guess, play-in game if it ended right now against the Pelicans to see which one of them gets in. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on to see if the Lakers are able to hold a playoff spot down the stretch.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be fun. Like I said, we'll focus more towards that, here in the next coming weeks. But just wanted to throw it out there of my my off the wall picks at the beginning of the year. They're still looking really good.
I like it. Yep. Good stuff.
Yes, sir.
All righty. Well, that's another episode in the books. Episode 17 it was a good one.
That it was.
By football talk. A lot of NFL playoff action we covered today. Didn't get to quite as many of the coaching changes. We left some of that on the table, but it gave us some topics of conversation to get to next week, especially with fewer games coming up. So I think it was a good show. A lot of content. Appreciate everybody listening to us. As always, make sure you check us out on your socials. We're hungry and thirsty for subscribers and likes. We're trying to put a lot of content out there and definitely engage with listeners and get your feedback. So hit us up, check us out, reach out to us in many different ways. But appreciate everybody listening. And Dan, as always, thanks for doing this with me. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, my man. And we'll see everybody on the other side.
You got it. Peace out.
Peace out.
Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Come on. Everybody come, everybody come.